10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bringing Design Closer. My name is Gerry Scullion and I'm a service designer, and I'm the founder of This Is HCD and the CEO of thisisdoing.com, where we provide live online design and innovation classes providing training for people within the design and change making space. We also have our new Doing Design Festival series now, and with the next event on June the 18th with the theme of Doing Design Online, with some of the This Is Doing team talking about loads of items related to that. For more information, see the doingdesignfestival.com. Now, today in the show, we have Lar Veale, lead UX designer for business banking in AIB, one of Ireland's biggest banks. We speak about the journey both Lar and AIB went on introducing Jobs to be Done framework and what this actually entailed. I have a little bit of experience with Jobs to be Done, but not an awful lot, so I was extra curious and approached this conversation as somebody who was kind of keen to learn a little bit more and also maybe discuss some of the caveats that went about introducing new things to an already established team and organisation. Anyway, let's get straight into the episode. Lar Veale, how's it going? How are you?
Great, Gerry. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, really? It's like we're starting off like Frasier here. That's what Fraser Crane used to say. But Lar, I've been excited to get to interview you. I've been trying to set this one up for quite a while. But obviously, this is my first podcast back post-COVID. Everyone, I've been out of action for a couple of months, but I'm excited to have my first guest back for 2021, believe it or not. It's Lar Veale. Lar, where are you coming from today?
I'm just in Louth, which is the wee county. It's the smallest county in Ireland.
Best county in Ireland.
Close to the border. The best, indeed. Just on the border with the north of Ireland.
Very good. I follow Lar on Instagram, and the photos that you send are insanely beautiful. And I'm actually from Louth as well, so I know I'm completely biased. But the Louth that I'm from and the Louth that you're living in are two different worlds. So it's absolutely a beautiful part of the world. Lar, today we're going to be chatting about Jobs to be Done.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll start up. Well, what's your experience about Jobs to be Done, and give us some context on what you're currently doing now?
Sure. So I first heard of Jobs to be Done quite a few years ago from Clayton Christensen. Died, unfortunately, this time last year. And Intercom were talking a lot about it as well when they kind of started out. So I dug a little bit deeper into it, and just recently have introduced the kind of concept and the method into where I work at the moment in AIB in Dublin. So yeah, that's basically where it's come from.
You mentioned there Intercom, okay, and I'd actually seen Emma Meehan, who was at Intercom for a number of years and since moved on. Yeah. Emma talking at UX Scotland when I was there a number of years ago, a great conference, and was talking about how effective it was in bringing the kind of customer closer and solving, valuable customer problems. And at that stage, I'll be honest with you, I was like, I enjoyed Emma's presentation, but I was like, oh, this is just another thing, another tool for a designer to potentially use, or worse, a non-designer to use and make a balls of it.
Sure.
So you mentioned there that you were probably a little bit cynic beforehand. What was causing that cynicism?
That's precisely it. I think I was a cynic, if not a skeptic, I suppose, in that was it just another model or another way of doing the same thing, effectively a repackage. And God help you if you go onto Medium and start reading some designers saying personas are bad, jobs to be done are good.
Yeah.
But I was a bit skeptical, and our friend Jared Spool has called jobs to be done a bit of a gimmick. However, and I'm okay with actually business people or non-designers using it. It's not just for designers. It's come in from business and from marketing and from innovation consultants, and for good reason. I think it's what I've seen, and I suppose there's a number of different positions on jobs to be done. You've got Bob Mesta, and the Clayton Christensen School of Jobs to be done.
Yeah.
You've got a guy called Alan Clement, who's kind of similar, I think. And then you've got Stradigan and Tony Ulwick. And I'd kind of favoured the latter one, Tony Ulwick's approach, largely credited with inventing jobs to be done. But for him and for Stradigan and for the people who kind of follow that school of thought is that it's a very precise framework. So very structured framework. So it gives you some very specific tools you can use to think from the outside in, rather than thinking about solutions first, that you're actually thinking about needs first. So again, and I can see I can join the dots or see an alignment between that and goal-directed design. The Alan Cooper School of Interaction Design, where you're really trying to ask who is the user, what are their goals, and why are they doing it.
Yeah.
So those to me are actually jobs to be done and outcome statements.
Yeah. So you brought this new method into AIB, which is one of Ireland's biggest banks, my bank. And what was the maturity like in AIB as regards and maturity and appetite for a new method of like something like this?
Well, I suppose there was certainly an appetite in the sense that, like any big company, you will often have initiatives that are very much solutions first. They may not have a customer need at all. And how do you know is the problem? Because what you don't want is for any innovation that's going to cost you time, money, and attention to be a game of chance. So it may or may not work. When how do you know? You need to, so certainly there's an appetite within my department, in business banking, to really figure out what is it that customers need. And really that has direct correlation to, once we know what that is, well, that can help us define our roadmap and our backlog of things to work on next.
So if you were to meet a cynic within the banking world and you were saying, well, we're going to be doing this new thing called jobs to be done, why should they care?
Well, I suppose I might not lead with jobs to be done because in many ways it's loaded. You have to sell it as a concept. I would talk really about the outcomes of jobs to be done or the value. And I would talk in terms of, do we know what our customers' needs are? How do we know? How confident are we that they are our customers' needs? Are they written down anywhere that we can point to? And does everyone agree on them? And that's really the problem, sure, you might have done some UX research and you might know what the customer needs are and they're floating around in your head or they're in your notebook or on your laptop. But how widely are they shared, acknowledged, agreed on, and rallied around?
Yeah.
I think that's why I think jobs to be done can have a real benefit. It's not a design type methodology. You're not talking in terms of contextual inquiry that we're going, what? It's more
accessible.
It's accessible is the right word, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm hearing. So like you mentioned there about personas being bad and jobs to be done are good. Like I've seen those articles and they're still out there and we should put them all into a little file and right click and delete. But let's talk about the problems that you think jobs to be done solves over personas, okay? Because typically in my world, personas, I've used them and I still use them to kickstart projects off, but typically I've seen them being done very badly, even within mature organizations where they articulate very fluffy needs. But I'm keen to hear... Or none. Yeah. So I'm really keen to hear, what your thoughts are on, can they potentially, personas and jobs to be done intersect? So if someone's already got personas within their organization, is this something that they can look at? Is it if this, then that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just like personas can be done badly, anything can be done badly, including jobs to be done. But I think, both require rigor, and that's often what's missing. We often look at the output of a persona. It's got a nice cheery picture of a person. It might have a little bit of a life story and some demographics. To me, that's, a bad persona. It should have very little in it that doesn't lead to a developer or a business person or another designer really understanding, this is how... Am I allowed, curse?
Yeah, go ahead. We're all adults in this podcast.
It should have nothing in it that doesn't lead to some sort of insight to say, okay, now I know who I'm designing for, why I'm designing it this way, or building it this way. And oftentimes what's missing from personas is the scenarios that go along with it. Personas are only the characters in a story. The scenarios need to kind of
the context,
plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but what I like about jobs to be done, I suppose, is, first of all, it does require the same level of rigor, but then it's the, I suppose, the precise framework. It brings real precision to where personas can be fluffy, if done well, of course.
Yeah.
And it's quite a prescriptive approach, prescriptive language within it. You've got the job itself, so that's what someone is trying to get done. And then within a job, you have a number of steps or sequence, not quite a task flow, but you've got steps within the job of what people are trying to get done. So it's, an example often cited is that in an operation, you were talking earlier about COVID, but in a medical setting, someone isn't looking at the screen or looking at the sphygmomanometer. They're looking to check the patient's blood pressure or the patient's vital signs. So it's not what they're doing, it's what they're trying to get done at each step. So a job can be broken down into kind of discrete job steps. And within that, there's a very precise language around what's called desired outcome statements. So I polled Twitter, the best of Twitter recently, and some top Irish entrepreneurs and VCs were giving out about how long it takes to open a bank account. It was crazy. They need to move fast. They don't want to be sticking around in this kind of administrivia. But if you were to phrase that as a desired outcome statement, you would say, minimize the time it takes to open a bank account so that I can get on with running my business. Yeah. So, and once you're very precise in that language, that's when the creativity comes in afterwards.
Yeah.
It's figuring out, okay, so, well, how do we best answer that question? Taking a leaf out of IDEO's book, how might we best minimize the time it takes to open a business bank account? So I can see all these parallels with design thinking, with interaction design, and with goal-directed design. Yeah. So I think it's very complementary.
So looking at the ecosystem that you had in front of you before Jobs to be Done arrived into your life, what are the kind of things that you feel are really needed to make Jobs to be Done successful and to be adopted within organizations?
I think what we've tried, I suppose, is, you asked, how would I sell Jobs to be Done earlier, but I think the first thing you need to do is learn it by doing. So it is definitely a new tool set. So you do have to, you may need some support in terms of training, but like most things and most change, you need an internal champion to make it happen. Yeah. So, or an ambassador, if not a champion. So someone who can introduce the concepts, give some training, and show it being done. And that's what we've done in AIB. We ran a series of 12 customer interviews, and we got a number of designers and UX researchers to conduct those interviews with a bit of training and coaching beforehand, a bit of mentoring during, and then we did the kind of analysis together. And what was really interesting is before we did this, I tried to put the lens of Jobs to be Done over some interview notes I'd taken over the years on, I think, 30 or 40 interviews, all around making payments. What are the problems around making payments? And I came out with about 20 to 30 outcome statements from those. So that it's kind of a retrospective activity. Yeah. But then when doing it the next time out, I think we tripled it. We had over 90 outcome statements from interviewing a different set of people with a precise lens of Jobs to be Done over it. Yeah. So these are 90 articulated needs that we can all agree and rely on and align on. And then the next step of the process is you can actually survey a larger sample and ask, of these outcome statements, which of them are most important to you and which of these are you the least satisfied with?
Let's talk a little bit more around that whole kind of surveying process, because it sounds very similar to Gerry McGovern's top tasks methods. I don't know if anyone has, have you ever used Gerry McGovern's top tasks?
I'm familiar with it, yeah, and I used it years ago with a telco. I think when the book first came out, I think it's out about 10 years.
The method's about 10 years, yeah. The book is about 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Maybe, okay.
Gerry's probably listening and going, no, Gerry, it was out 18 months ago. I'm useless with dates. But like in terms of, you mentioned there about doing surveying, and I guess it would be good to understand what an end-to-end journey looks like for a Jobs to be Done project.
Sure. If you're following the prescribed process, the first step is really to interview people.
Yeah.
They may not be customers, they may not be even users, but it's really in the problem space. It's not in the solution space. You're really trying to figure out how people think, what they're trying to get done, not just in the narrow purview of what you can offer and what your capabilities are. Because if you do that, you're blind to potential opportunities and the needs that are unserved elsewhere. So that'll be the first thing. So you can do a number of interviews. I would advocate, somewhere between 12 and 20. And you can do multiple types of interviews. That's quite a
lot, Lara. That's quite a lot. 12 and 20 is quite a lot. Why is it so high?
Because you're going to get different types of people, So I think that's generally why patterns can emerge, after 5, 6, 7, 8. But like in AIB's example, we've got small businesses, we've got medium-sized businesses, we've got corporates, and they may have very similar needs. We don't know until we've done the work, So my point is that it, does require rigor. But 20 interviews is probably 20 hours. So
is that per kind of actor within the system, or is that holistically? So if there's two actors, so say if you've got, say, a business or a banking teller and the customer, are you doing 20 interviews for the teller and 20 interviews for the customer? I
mean, you could, yeah. I mean, it's, I suppose, yeah. I mean, you're not being too prescriptive on the system. You're unbounded somewhat. Okay, you're going to obviously talk to business people. Yeah. If we're a business banking platform, but we may be interested in answering a really broad question on, should we bring in an invoicing system? I'm just purely speculating to allow customers to send invoices to their customers. There are plenty of software providers that do this already outside of banking. But good question is, should we do it? Is that market unserved? Is there a market?
Yeah.
So you are trying to answer big questions like, is there a market for something? Or is something viable if we do it? Down to the level of, what should we put on the roadmap? What's next? So it's kind of can serve big, broad strategic questions down to, what are the top 3 things we need to deliver, in the next couple of sprints.
Okay, very good. So you've recruited your 20 or 12 to 20 people. You have to create a script. So as regards the focus of the conversation that you're going to have, how is that designed? How is that? Because when it comes to script creation, I'm kind of working between worlds, trying to make sure that the conversation is on track.
Yeah, I think good exploratory interviews from the UX world are quite similar. You'd ask things like, tell me about a time when you were trying to make a payment, for example. Tell me about what's most frustrating about that. Tell me about the things you do before you make a payment or after you make a payment. What takes the most time? Tell me about the last time something went wrong.
Okay.
So very much open-based questions.
Yeah.
But then you kind of go down a layer. Again, the 5 whys is a common technique. But you would ask things like, so what are you trying to get done at that step just before you make a payment? And why do you do it that way?
Yeah.
And you might, so you might go up for why. And then in terms of getting to how they do something, how they actually do the job right now, you'll ask them the how type questions. How do you store that invoice? Why do you store that invoice? I might store that invoice that I need to pay because I don't want to forget it when it's due.
Yeah.
And how do you store that? Well, I store that in a spreadsheet, or I store that in a folder on my phone. And some of those why do you choose that solution over another solution?
Yeah.
And have you tried anything else? And, when you get to the point of someone, you can really explore why someone uses a certain solution, or they've explored a workaround because something's so frustrating.
Yeah.
There's gold in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have a team of people tracking, or like you doing transcripts within those research sessions? Because like any method, the quality of the output is down to the quality of your raw data that you're going to get to work with, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of these interviews is to identify the outcome statements, which are another word for need. What is the precise need? So we've tried transcripts; they work. So some of the tools out there nowadays are phenomenal. Using Look Back, using Dovetail. Dovetail uses an automated kind of transcription service. It's not the best in Irish accents, I will say, but
surprise! It's based out of Sydney.
Yeah, but it's I think, I'm not sure what they use in the background for the transcription. It might be Otter.
Yeah.
But it actually, it has meant that we've missed very little, when we go back and analyze the transcripts. But actually the technique that I'm most interested in at the moment is during the interview. And it's really worked well remotely because you share a screen and you're writing out the insights and the participant can see them. So, like let's, for example, I'm concluding a payment. So what are you trying to conclude in a payment? What are you trying to achieve is the type of question you would ask.
Yeah.
And they might say, well, I want to make sure that the recipient knows they've been paid and it was me who paid them and they know why I've paid them. Okay, so what are you trying to avoid in that situation? And you're probably trying to minimize the likelihood that a payment goes unrecognized by a recipient.
Yeah.
Or minimize the back and forth or any disputes around being paid when the person is being paid.
Yeah.
And they go, oh yeah, that's right. So you write that down and then you would literally validate it with them in the room saying, is that accurate? Now you're not quite putting words in their mouth, but there is a bit of play and back and forth on, does this feel right?
Okay. Which is kind of the I guess the antithesis from my world as a design researcher. When I sit there, I'm like, sometimes I'm very coy, and I don't say things for them to jump on and say, yeah, that's right.
Not. Yeah, exactly. You're not trying to. I suppose you're not trying to put words in their mouth, but there is some synthesis happening
in play
in the interview, rather than you've got your transcript and now later you figure out what that means.
So that does come with a bit of a risk, though. That does come with a bit of, there's potential there for some, and I'm not,
No, I agree. I think that you need to be very careful. You need to be a skilled interviewer to know that you are not the expert. They're still the expert.
Yeah.
You've parked your worldview at the door. You're using their words, not yours.
Yeah.
And you've got the beginner's mindset, all that good stuff that comes from being a good design researcher. I suppose that's the technique, at least, that we're trying.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful, though. You're right.
Absolutely. So you've got your 20 interviews, and they've all been transcribed, and you're ready to go. And Lar comes in on a Monday morning, and he's like, "Right, folks, we're going to be doing some synthesis this week. What does the synthesis look like, and how does it differ to the traditional, say, design research process?"
I suppose with the traditional design process, at times you can go straight from an observation to a conclusion without a bit in between, in the sense that you can start going, well, what's the solution? What's the solution? What do we design because of what we've heard? Rather than saying, let's stick with the problem statements.
Yeah.
And that's what JobSpin is good at. It's not talking about creativity. It's not talking about design. It's talking about, precisely what are the customer needs that are out there.
Yeah.
So the output of say 12 or 20 interviews would be a long list of outcome statements or needs. You've not assigned any importance to them. You've not even validated that they are needs, apart from they came up in some interviews. You're not saying they came up most often. The next step is that JobSpin survey, where for every need, you ask those questions: how important is this to you? And how satisfied are you? And from that, you've got a ranked list of needs. That you're still not deciding to do any of these things. You're saying, well, this is what we've identified in our interviews. This seems to be how they rank. Now what? So that's when the skills of synthesis and design come in, and creativity. Okay, that seems to be a problem. So like one of the things that came up was minimizing the time it takes to make multiple payments. Through my design interviews and my design research interviews, I had heard one interviewee talk about spending 45 minutes to an hour every morning making payments. I said, that's madness. And they were just internal payments. They had lots of incoming bank accounts, and they needed to transfer all that money to an operational account. And for one reason or another, they didn't know, or we didn't have a feature that would enable them to do that faster. Well, we know that the outcome statement there is minimize the time it takes to make multiple payments.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds of solutions out there. You've heard of sweeping probably, which is kind of automated rules around if my balance is over a certain amount, transfer the money out into someplace else. That's one solution. There could be quick pay type features that you could enable. You could reduce the number of bank accounts people actually needed.
Yeah.
There's lots of things, but I suppose the answer, the point is you don't start with those solutions. You start with, okay, that's the need, and it's very, very precise. And that's one that we can very clearly articulate to all our stakeholders around the place.
Can I ask, so when you've done those research interviews, is the survey done straight away afterwards, or do you need a little bit of synthesis in between?
I think you always need a bit of synthesis. There's no substitute for actually thinking through things properly.
Okay.
And you may need to look at how you phrase an outcome statement, because more or less you're going to take those and show them to a sample size and get a survey. And once you've put a survey question live, there's very little opportunity for follow-ups or clarity. It's generally you would look at the phrasing of your outcome statements.
Yeah.
You would do a test version of the survey to make sure people understand what it is you're asking.
Yeah.
Effectively, usability test survey, and probably should do all the time.
Yeah, and absolutely. So with the survey, it's with different people. It's not with the same set of people that you've had for the interviews, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's,
and they don't need to be they don't have to be your customers. They could be customers of other institutions. You do want to cast the net widely, and you do ask segmentation-based questions either at the start or at the end. What kind of business do you work for? How big is that business? In our case, at least.
Yeah.
What industry are you in? Are you the owner of the business, or are you just an employee of the business? Are you manage all those things? To see if there's any correlation in the data that comes out. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of, and like I've not used Jobs to be Done. I've used Kano modeling and top tasks and all this kind of stuff. But that survey you mentioned there kind of reminds me a little bit of the phrasings of the questions within Kano modeling. Have you?
It's very similar. Like there's paired questions.
Yeah,
I think Kano looks at the solutions. So I think again, I can see
you need to have your solutions up front for Kano. Like you need to have your features, and it kind of works out the basic needs and the desire. Yeah,
but I think whereas you could really use them in a complementary way.
Absolutely.
I haven't yet, but I mean, Kano looks at how basically asking the question. Yeah, how satisfied would you be with the presence of this feature or the absence of it? How pissed off would you be? And the delighters and the table stakes type stuff. But
absolutely. So it could be like, when you're saying it there, I'm seeing a journey of hierarchy of things, and the concepts could be used in the Kano model. Or the outputs of the jobs to be done could be used in terms of a Kano model, survey or research study.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could be really cool.
Yeah. So I mean, we're going to explore that. And that's the great thing. With the opportunity to work through these things. So we have to try it first and see if it works for us. Once we kind of understand the method and how to practice it, I suppose.
How does it integrate with like other studies that are running concurrently? So say you've got a couple of teams doing jobs to be done, and there's maybe some things that are intersecting. Is there any kind of secret sauce as regards the repository of information that's captured during jobs to be done research and synthesis?
Well, that's one thing we did recently was we brought in Dovetail as a research repository, because I remember asking questions, does anyone know about how to best add credit cards to accounts or something like that. And I was on Slack, and what was very interesting was there was definitely someone who knew the answer, but it's who you knew. Yeah, there was no place to go to. It had to be a person to go to, and of course, if they move on, the knowledge goes with them. Yeah, and memory fades as well. So the research repository we have is phenomenal, because any new initiative that we're working on, any new feature where the question comes like, okay, what do we know about this? What do we know about the people who need to use this at some point? And through clever tagging within Dovetail, we can get to an answer pretty quickly. Yeah. So desk research can be the primary research you do rather than the secondary, if it exists in Dovetail, and if it's recent, and if you feel that it's, timeless rather than ephemeral.
How have you found working remotely and all this stuff with jobs to be done and stuff?
Yeah. I think it's actually been pretty positive, particularly in research and interviews, when you're fixed to a specific location, like your head office, where you've got really good research rooms and usability lab. You're kind of constrained by your geographical area. So who can get to you? Who could afford to get to you over their lunch break during a working day in a timely way? Whereas now we can cast the net far wider across the country, and not just our country. AIB are in Northern Ireland and in Great Britain as well. Yeah. So we've been able to interview customers
more inclusively.
Inclusively over look back. So that's been really, really helpful. So that's been, I think, one of the benefits. It kind of forced us into doing that. It means that we can go back out, when things do, or if they ever return to normal, that, we shouldn't be constrained by our geographic limitations.
Yeah, and absolutely. Looking back on what you as the organization and also yourself, what are the key learnings, and what would you do differently based on what you've done now?
I probably would have taken it in earlier. But hindsight's great from that perspective. But, so we brought training in. So we got someone from strategy to train us. But in terms of what I do differently, I suppose looking back over my old research notes, pre-jobs to be done, oftentimes I might have been the sole interviewer or maybe with someone with me. But the notes we took weren't full transcripts. They were summary notes of what we felt were important in the moment or what we caught and lacked the things we missed. Whereas the benefit of, and actually this is one of the things from working remotely, in that if we're recording interviews and with the ability now to run transcripts, there's less likelihood of us missing anything. So we can focus on the interview in the moment rather than trying to capture everything right there and then. You can go back over your transcripts. So that's been really useful. And that's, I suppose, technology has enabled that in many respects. So previously we were using more manual ways to record, and it was just a pain to go back over notes. Whereas if you can timestamp certain things in a full interview video and transcript, you can go back over it and zone in,
review it
after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's brought a bit of rigor back. I think that should have been done anyway, but it's focused again on that sense of rigor.
Yeah, which has been quite good.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think I'm sure like any big business, there's been near misses where there's been an initiative where a project could have gone out and maybe still does with a solution first focus.
Yeah.
Whereas this thinking from the outside in, I mean, that's been a kind of a design researcher's mantra for years.
Yeah.
But, and we've been asking for the seat at the table for so long, and maybe this is one way we do it. We're using something that's actually brought over from business, from Clayton Christian, from Bob Nesta. We're bringing one of the tools that's probably more recognized in that side of the house, and indeed marketing. But once you're very clear on what those needs are, you don't actually have to create something new. It may be that actually, Jesus lads, we have something. We're just not talking about it in this way. Yeah. We need to talk about something we have in this new way of how it solves problems for people.
Yeah, resequencing the system.
Yeah.
It's probably, that's a really good point. Lar, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can check out my cinnamon buns on Twitter at Lawrence Veale.
Yeah.
Or they can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I'll put links to those in the show notes. Lar, I'll be honest, I'm a bit disappointed that I didn't get my cinnamon buns in the post. Lar mentioned to me a number of weeks ago his cinnamon buns. We've also been joking about the cinnamon buns for quite a while, but check out Lar's cinnamon buns. They're great,
Well, once restrictions are lifted next month, Gerry, I will deliver a fresh batch of cinnamon buns. 12 buns. Yeah. Lar was telling me he's got a really large oven. He's like a baker that up in North Louth, having lots of baking excursions in his lockdown. But Lar, it was great. Like I learned a lot today about jobs to be done. Hopefully people give it a try. Who do you recommend to follow or read in terms of materials about learning more about jobs to be done? There's a few out there. I'd start with Strategy, and I'd look at Tony Ulwick's book. I think it's a free book called Jobs to be Done.
Yeah.
It's based on his original book, which is another book about 10 years old or more, called Outcome-Driven Innovation.
Oh, yeah.
What customers want. That one. But there's also Bob Nesta's side of things. He's a book out as well. But really, what they boil down to for me is they boil down to outcomes, focusing on outcomes, not input, not features, focusing on outcomes.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss to not mention Jim Kalbach.
Yeah.
He wrote a great book about bringing all the different strands of jobs to be done together into one book.
Yeah.
And a very practical, not dogmatic
reference type book.
Yeah, but it gives you kind of playbooks on how to apply them. It doesn't give you the full thing.
Which is perfect.
Exactly. It's one of those books that you don't read cover to cover, although you can, but it's one you pick it up and go, okay, I have a specific type of problem. How do I use jobs to be done, or some method to help solve that?
Yeah. How might I not eat all the cinnamon buns?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll put a link to Jim's and Bob Nesta's books there into the show notes. Lar, thanks again for your time. It's been loads of fun.
Cheers, Gerry. Thanks a million.
So there you have it. That's all for this episode of Bringing Design Closer. If you like this episode, feel free to visit thisishcd.com, where you can access our back catalogue of over 100 episodes, with episodes related to service design, product management, design research, and much, much more. If you're interested in design and innovation training, feel free to check out our business, thisisdoing.com, where you can join online classrooms and learn from the world's best design and innovation leaders. Join the This Is HCD newsletter where you'll receive updates from the network, and also if you're interested, apply to join the Slack community on thisishcd.com. Stay safe, and until next time, take care.